episode 50. You're the big 50 here, so I'm really excited, my man. Man, I think we'll just get straight into it, but I just want to start off by saying it's been a pleasure meeting you this last week and a half on TikTok. I'm so brand new to TikTok. We're doing the show directly from TikTok, streaming across other places. So those that are witnessing it on other platforms will see all the little things and notes on the screen. And basically, we'll go into the story of Jeffrey and do a bit of a deep dive, and I'm going to push and pull and prod and poke and find out a bit more about him and his life and how he got to the part of where he is today, which is a really positive part. Hanging around the skunk crew, right? The skunk, right? So you're like one of the leaders of this gang. So it's a pretty positive, good gang, and a little bit more on the show. But thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me, and proud to be the big on your podcast, mate. And congrats to yourself. 50 episodes on any podcasting, it's unbelievable, and it's important for people out there. Sometimes they don't realise the journey of something in general. 50 podcasts is an amazing effort. To be able to get 50 people sharing their knowledge who they have value to add to people's lives. I think that's a great journey in itself. And, congrats to the big 50 for your brother. I really, really want to share this. So I just want to plug this charge in, Rock, and I apologise to everybody, including your podcast.
You're right, mate. You go for it. No, you can still hear me. So thank you for the kind words there, man. It's been a while to build up to this stage, and now we're just like rolling in the mix. It's quite fun. Jesus is coming soon. Thanks for that. So yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. This is going to be a great story. I got the pleasure of interviewing Gary last week, and just meeting you boys. There's so many great stories that are going to come out here in these talks, and I was honored to be able to speak to you today, man. Really, you know how excited I was to speak to you.
Man, I appreciate it. And I think any interaction with any human being will always help you grow and prosper in life. I think when you're open to that, and when you're open to somebody that's had 50 podcasts with 50 different people, that's a huge bunch of knowledge that we can all learn from, and I'm looking forward to it just as much.
Thank you very much, man. I just want to start off by prefacing the show a little bit, is that people are able to interact into the show, right? So we want our community to come forward and ask questions. Basically, what you got to do is you've got to go to, if you're here on TikTok, you can go to my bio, score Rocstedi, and you'll see my my Instagram handle there. Plug that and go to messages, and you can record a message on the show. I'll be able to play it here on the show. Any of the others from any of my original crew from the other podcasts, I do know that system. So please feel free to leave a message along the way. So we'll probably hold off on messages for parts of it as we get into the story, and then we'll take little breaks to answer those messages. But we do try to knock them on the head straight away, so they're still relevant from whenever you left it. But mate, ready to go into it? Are you?
I'm ready, man. Let's deep dive.
Right.
Let's
deep dive. Okay. So we always start at the beginning, as I always preface at the start, is that just going back to your childhood, a little bit about where you were born, how old you are, and what life was like for you as a child in your town.
Yeah, man. I was born in Paddington, New South Wales. The hospital no longer exists. I'm now 49 years of age, being as healthy as I possibly can on that journey towards the big 50. Quite ironic. Would have been good if I was 50, Rock, for your 50th episode. Mate, I grew up in Everly Street, Redfern. I grew up in Redfern, actually, I should say, Redfern, Waterloo. I was in between both parents, similar to a lot of people across this country, across the globe, where both parents had split up. They were doing their best to obviously show us the best version of themselves and role model me in the best way that they could. Unfortunately, that went to a particular level, and I ended up growing up in between houses a lot of the times. Redfern Waterloo is a very disadvantaged area in the inner city or Sydney part of Sydney, inner city part of Sydney. It's about 5 minutes out of the city, actually. A lot of drugs, a lot of people in Waterloo. It was very notorious for the wrong reasons, to the point where cab drivers, people wouldn't even come into the area. And I think that paints a picture in itself. You still get, someone said the other day they actually got in the cab and they tried to get to Redfern and they still told them to get out, which is pretty crazy because it's changed totally from what it was to where it is now. It's more, yeah, funky, I suppose, probably a way of putting it. A lot of new flats have gone up. They've redone a lot of the older houses in the area, done them up inside, and they're working in now. And people walk around the streets where back in the day it just wouldn't happen. I can guarantee no one wanted to go to Redfern or be near Redfern at that point in time. So it's just an area of destruction, realistically. And unless you knew someone or was from the area, it was quite dangerous walking through there. And it's definitely going to change for the better.
Mate, I've got to tell you, I went to Redfern around 2001. I was in the army, so one of my army mates was there for the weekend. We got to get away, and I had no idea what Redfern was like until I got
Yeah,
there, and it was rough, man. From what I saw, just spending a couple of days there, I think like
yeah,
that one night we went to have a barbecue. There was police choppers flying around. We went down the road to see what was going on. There's a fucking car on fire, and they were just looking for people. I was like, what the fuck place have I stepped into? It was wild, and that was around 2000. So you must be talking about the 80s, where you're sort of talking about at this time,
and
right?
that, and I mean that in the nicest way. You look back, it was pretty mild compared to what it used to be. The car that would be on fire would usually be a police car where the coppers have been pulled out and they'd run off and left their car and taken off, and mate, the car gets set alight. Everyone stands around keeping warm for the night. So that's the type of man. Like you got to think about it. There's a movie out there. It's called The Town. I remember at the start of the movie says it's one of the most known areas in the world, bank robbers. And I think our area was so destructive that people would meet there to go and rob banks. And you got to think about that whole conversation. It's just a different world in general. People know that, what are you doing today? Yeah, let's go out. And that would be the mentality of the area. Or let's go make money in a specific way. And I think if you've got an area of that nature, you've got to know the depth of the role modeling within that, the destruction within it, the thought process, the mindsets of people. A lot of people in survival mode, and everyone was doing what they could to be you surviving in that day and age. And I think that sums up the area in general. To have an area of that nature and to go to jail was a badge of honour, whether it's male or female. And it's one of those areas where it was either tough or you didn't survive. I think that was the biggest thing that taught me very much at the tough times where you can keep crawling forward no matter what happens. And that's huge for anybody listening in. A lot of today's society, I feel, is soft, and I think that's just a programming in general of people. And we've just changed from this, the old school way where it's very tough, and people are like, oh, people have that mentality. If you put that to them, oh mate, I'll fight anyone and I'll do anything, but it's not about fighting people. It's just the toughness of being able to stand up for yourself in a situation to make sure that your inner peace, your happiness doesn't take the hit that it needs to because you're strong enough to keep moving forward when you take those hits. I think that's just a lesson within itself, and that sums up the area that.
I was just going to say, it seems like the generations these days are lacking a lot of resilience. That there just seems a lot of snowflakes out there at the moment that don't know how to push through some things like back in the day. There was a lot of things, and going back on the other side, swinging back on the other side of the pendulum. You weren't allowed to also show emotions back there, so there was some sort of balance that's been missed here. I think from then till now, swinging on both ends of the
Absolutely.
pendulum.
I think times changed too. You had mobile phones come out in between, technology's taken its huge toll. Social media is now out, and you've got a different sort of generation where there's a lot of expectancy, and then on social media's created this environment where people just want, and they live in this life of wanting everything that somebody else has rather than focusing on what they actually have already and being grateful for that. And I think that's something in Redfern at the time, we appreciated. We didn't paint the houses were smashed up. The windows were smashed out, graffiti everywhere. There was cockroaches, rats. It was destructive as. but we always were very grateful for the community that we had. We were very strong. We had each other's backs, and you know, we lived within happy. We were happy within that environment. And you got to think to yourself, we focused on what we had rather than I didn't have a Porsche, I didn't have some sort of fast car. I can honestly tell you, it didn't phase me at any stage. I was still happy internally at that point in time. And most people will say, how can you be happy in that environment? And that's the biggest thing. If you're not finding your own happiness or inner peace in the environment that you're in, then you're not in a spot where you actually want to be. And I think if you're in that spot, then you need to shift out of it. And I think you look at the health issues, the suicide rates, the mental health, I should say, they are through the roof at the moment. As I said, a lot of snowflakes out there, a lot of tough characters outside, but nothing internal. And that's just how we're built, I think, as a society in this day and age. You know, different generations. And that, if you can combine both of those, where you find the softer side and are able to see things through a different light perspective, you can get a better outcome for the whole community. I think that's one that I'd love for people to start to tap into and go back, have a look at that generation, how they operated, how they stood up. You know, look at a movie like Rocky. They actually talk about it in it. You got to keep moving forward, no matter how you get hit. And I think that's a huge, that sums up that generation versus this generation. You know, in this day and age, the expectancy, the comparisons to everybody else's life, and you know, we beat ourselves up internally that we become soft because we're not living that optimum life around what's important to yourself. It's huge for anybody.
Oh, there. We have a
Yeah.
message that's coming from Danny before I want to ask you a question to go back to your childhood again, but let's play that. I don't think I mentioned before, if we do hear this sound during the show, it means a message has come in. Doesn't mean you have to stop talking, but we just know that it's sitting there and we can get to those messages. But here goes from Danny Shannon. And for some reason, when the first time I always play this, it does this, but let's try again. No. Give me a second. I don't know what's going on there. Is she connected?
Yeah, all those
Let's try that again. My bad. It does it every now and then. Go.
Hello. Hi. Excuse me. Hi, Jeffrey Morgan. Rocksteady. What's going on, boys? Mate, just wanted to jump on, take advantage of this wonderful feature, and just share with you two men that I think you're both incredible. Morgs, I love your work. Thank you for your guidance. Rocksteady, you absolutely inspire me with your creativity. Up you go, legends. And by the way, it's my birthday. Can you please sing me happy birthday, both of you now? Okay, bye.
Happy birthday, mate. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a personal one offline after the show for sure. I'll definitely sing that to you before I go to bed tonight, all right?
Let me
No
tell
doubt.
you, if I sing happy birthday, that is one thing I cannot do to save my life. Sing. Everyone will tune off as,
The
as
cancel
quickly as I
screech.
start singing. 100%.
So,
Love it.
okay, so happy birthday to Danny. You're a great guy too, man. Looking forward to doing one of these with you as well soon, brother. So, Jeffrey, I want to go back again. You said that your parents split up when you were young. Do you have any siblings as well?
7 brothers, 2 sisters. They took a lot of those took the path that I took and went through custody. And but one of my sisters became a champion jockey and absolutely killed it. And, you know, she won Queensland Group A riding championships, which means all the riders and the amount of wins they have over their season. She won that 3 years in a row as far as which is pretty solid effort from a female in the sense of that industry. I think it's just a great credit to herself.
Absolutely. So,
It shows you when you're constructive and you choose a constructive path rather than a destructive path. You can be good at both things, but you end up in a different place at a different time.
sure. So 7 brothers, 2 sisters. That's a lot of siblings. Where did you sort of fall into the ranking of that? Oldest,
Was
youngest,
second,
middle?
no, second youngest second youngest at the
Okay,
time.
second youngest. So, how old were you when your parents?
Probably about 10. I don't actually know the correct age, but I was that young, and I know one thing out of all of that, there's one really strong memory of my father and mother standing on Redfern Street, Redfern Oval. And I can remember the exact spot, and they asked me, "Who do you want to live with?" And I was like, "Well, I want to live with both of you." And they're like, "No, you've got to choose one of us." And I was like, "I ain't choosing." Like as a young kid, I was like, "I want to live with both of you," obviously at that point in time. And I just remember crying and, looking at my parents going, I just didn't understand what was going on at the time. And unfortunately, they'd obviously split up at that point in time, living in two different locations. And it got to a point where they obviously got asked this question. I think as a 10-year-old kid. Um, Maybe that's what they thought was the best conclusion and solution. But unfortunately, yeah, it's something that traumatized me for a long time. Yeah, obviously having to choose between both. I don't think I chose anyone. I can't remember saying I want to live with one of those, but I do recall that all the time. And then they just went through this little battle where my mother would take me, my father would take me. I'd go up to Walgett, which is 8 hours out of Sydney, come back to Sydney, go back there, and it was just a merry-go. A lot of instability at that point in time.
So then, as a young fella, before the age of 10 there, with maybe things that were going on at home, did that have an effect on you as you were growing up as well? And did that carry over to school? So what was school like for you with making friends and growing up like that? So what was that saying? Can you build that out for me?
Yeah, it was weird because at school, probably, I was, I don't know, I got on with people. I was good at sport. So I had a lot of friends through sport. And that sort of just rolled up into the playground, I suppose. Um, because, that I knew that person who'd introduced me to another kid. And I ended up having a lot of friends in school, I suppose, growing up. And I actually loved school and I actually did really well. My father was um, German Austrian, so very strict in that sense. He was my, uh, and he was doing the best thing for me at that point in time. And I think I didn't realise that. I thought he was actually being a prick at the time because he was saying, "Mate, be home by 5 o'clock. If you're 1 minute late, usually sort of I got sorted out in a little way, shape, or form." And for me, I learned a lot of lessons in that journey that later on in life formed the person I am today. But unfortunately, as a young kid, someone your parent being strict, you think they're being strict, but what they're trying to do is push you or guide you in the right direction. I now know a lot of his lessons taught me huge value within my life, and I'm very grateful for that.
Okay. What about academically at school? Was it you good at sport? What about like academically? Was it I mean easy for you to focus in class with things going on in life at the time? Yeah.
Yeah, like I didn't think I actually did really well at school. Always
Okay.
did. And I don't know if it was, yeah, same. I don't know if I was able to block it out. I don't know what it was. I think I enjoyed learning in general, and just, I don't know, maybe I was so destructive at home that when I was at school, it was a place of peace,
Structure.
um,
Mm.
happiness, structure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was, but I think I just enjoyed it quite a lot. And to be able to get away from the home, I suppose, at that point of time.
Okay.
Dad was more physically abusive, I suppose, and getting he'd come home 1 minute late, and you knew about it. And I got to the point where I'd go to school and I was covered in bruises at time. And I think that was that generation's way of showing you, yeah, trying to put you into learning. Uh, I sort of, in one way, it makes you tough in one regard. And I never look back on it and went, "Oh, what a prick." I actually just went, I think at the time when I was a young kid, man, when you're a young kid, 10, 11, 12 years old, mate, I think in the end, I didn't like getting the toaster cord around my legs or something like that. That that's just the reality of the situation that we grew up in. Love school for whatever reason, thrived at school. really
What
well.
about your relationship with your siblings? Like, what was that like? Were they were they acting like a bit more of a security for you as a parent, or um, an alpha display to you in any way, or were they like picking you, helping you? What was that relationship like?
Yeah, no, I think like so we at the time we were just living. I was the only one with my dad. Actually, like with my sister, who became a. It's quite ironic because me and my sister we've done well in our life. Obviously, with my business and my life, and my sister became that amazing jockey that she did, and we both lived with my father. And I think that discipline that dished out with sisters went down a path of destruction. Um, I suppose my sister, my other sister, she did well, like just worked in life, and she brought our kids up well as well, and so she had a bit of structure there. She didn't go down the path of my brother, but all my brothers ended up same thing with the badger bond or going to jail and just normal behaviour within the community. And I think something that I look back on is I didn't have a fear of going to boys' homes or jails, but I knew not only were they there, but from Redfern and Waterloo was that you walk in there and it's just like being in the area. So it wasn't a deterrent or something to be fearful.
I think I am. I think we are. Yes, we are. Of course, we are.
Yeah,
If we're
like,
live like this, we're live, right? Yeah, cool.
yeah, exactly.
Um, so
As long as I
unless we're just
we
talking
are
to
live, and
ourselves.
if
Yes,
someone
we
can
are.
let us
Yeah,
know, yeah,
of
little
course.
Miss Trouble, shout out to you. She said,
Thank
yes,
you
we
very
are.
much. Up because obviously we're leading up to some things that happened when you're a little bit older. But what
In a way, when I was about probably, say, like, to be honest, like, and this is to everyone, it's very hard to recall a lot of that stuff from back then, dates, times, even when I did get locked up. People can record dates and what happened. And for me, I think I'm one of those people, if it doesn't serve me, um, in the sense, I'm not fussed by it. I don't need to know the details of the date I was locked. But some people can record a date and so forth. Man, I'm lucky to understand some of the charges that happened on that particular date, unless you had the sheet in front of me. But it started probably when we were 12, and me and my brother had gotten into a canteen, and it was all about survival. We were starving. There wasn't food at home. We sat down and we were chomping away at chips and everything that was in this canteen, and as two young kids would. And we just wanted to take food. That was it. We didn't do it to 20 other reasons. I opened a abundance, and he read Frog got a bundle of money, and I was like, whoa. And it basically just sort of rolled off from there. We started to realise, hey, we can find money in these places. And then we started to obviously go on this little roll. Now, I had this mentality from my father, even up to it, I'd had a lot of habits and rituals around high performance, that get the most out of yourself. And I think that then put me into the arena of, hey, I'm going to make money in a way where I could survive. And not only me, but provide for my brother, my mother, who I'd run away to at that point in time. Provider at probably 12 years of age, and you got to have a look at any 12-year-old kid today. I look at them and was I really that young providing for my family? Like, it's just an insane. Not because I'm in it, but if we look at any your nephew or something, your niece, 12, and go, this kid's going to provide for this family. That was my mentality. And I just went out, made it happen. I think it's just an insane conversation.
That's insane. I just can't imagine like any 12-year-old these days doing that. to provide for a whole family, you know, and bearing that responsibility on your shoulders, an adult without having the knowledge as what an adult has, doing whatever the fuck you had to do, you know, definitely leading you down a particular track. We have a message here that's coming from the King, Elvis from the US. So I'm going to play that. Here we go.
What's going on, guys? It's good to see you guys live on here. I'm watching on YouTube, so I'll be in and out. Got a little bit of work to do, but I'm enjoying the story so far, man. Good on you guys.
Thanks, King. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Quite ironic. My father loved Elvis, and actually, mate, when I was young, he took us over to Elvis's house.
Oh wow. Well, he actually lives not far from Elvis himself's house back
really?
over the States. Yeah. I loved Elvis, but I didn't love him as much as I do these days now. Actually, having a friend called Elvis.
and a crazy story. Stuck in the house, and my dad was, look at this. I'm like, mate, we're gonna miss our flight. We're gonna miss our flight. We ended up missing our flight, and that flight didn't make the other end, which was
oh wow,
crazy story. Yeah, not many people. I've never spoken about that on a podcast. He was infatuated with Elvis. He always played him, and we were there at the house, and Elvis is, don't quote me, that's her auntie. My dad's like, oh, I want to go talk to her. I was like, can't talk to her. She's over the back bit, like it was sectioned off or something. So, mate, just chill out. And I think you'd press it and it would click. And you'd
click and
I think
wind.
they were disposable or something. I think you had to go and develop the film back then. So people, you know, this young generation, you wouldn't even understand it. The film, take it into a development photo for a short. We get in, probably back, you know, and might have had a hire car. Took back. I think we had a hire car Cadillac, and we went back to the airport, and we missed our flight, and that flight just didn't make the other end.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And you know, to be here and impact lives. And now that I think about it, it's just an insane little journey. Something I never really thought about until I thought of that. And Elvis, is it that Elvis came in and gave us that message at the point of that story? Moustache, funny story. Whilst I was over there, I grew this moustache, and I looked like excuse the term, but I looked like a porn star. Literally, terrible moustache. I've got photos. I'll try and run one and post one up, so you get an idea of it. But we went to Vegas to go into the casino, and I get to the first bloke and I ask him, he said, mate, you got an idea? I said, oh, it's back at the hotel. He goes, date of birth. I'll give you the date of birth to make sure I was 18 years of age. That's per Australia. 21 to come into our nightclubs here or into the casinos. I was like, yeah. And then he turns around and he goes, mate, he's pulling your leg. And the bloke goes, keep moving, buddy. So we didn't get in anyway.
Throwing you under the bus. Thanks, Dad.
But priceless times. You look back on it.
Oh, that's good, man.
Good time.
We've got a message that's come in, Jeffries, from the UK. A friend of mine as well, Mr. Bombastic, he calls himself. He's got a big, deep voice like me.
And hello, Jeffrey. Congratulations, Rock, on 50. Here's to the next fucking 50. Yeah, your beard looks very fucking sexy in HD as well. And really compelling story so far, Jeffrey. Looking forward to the rest. Bless you both. Also, fuck you, Rock.
Thanks, bro. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Bombastic.
Mr. Bombastic's been with me on the journey since the start. So, yeah. To the age we started to have to support family, explain to me the weight bearing on your shoulders for something like that. I mean, was there excitement for, you know, being able to provide? Was there pressure of failure? Like, what was going through your mind at such a young age at that time?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think I ever thought about it. And I don't think there was pressure. I just think I was in survival mode. I wanted to eat. And I just realized, you know, if I can make money out of these little situations, getting into these shops, and then I started to learn how to turn the alarms off. Then I started to learn how to get into bigger things to make more money. Sense. That was just a process where I could feed all of it. And yeah, and then a crew had started, and we started hanging out, and um, I never thought about it as, you know, I wanted to be notorious. I didn't want to be anything of that nature. There was no pressure on me. When I got locked up as a young kid, same thing. I didn't think I should have let the family down or anything of that nature. Um, it was not just 13 people in the house at stages, and I'd never forget it. And I'd be on a foam mattress on the floor, and the floor, as I said, was cockroaches, rats, and I never forget at times I'd woken up thinking someone was touching me, and you'd have like, I'm not even kidding when I say this, like a mouse, a rat, a cockroach, or something on your chest, and you could like freaked out. Well, and then you get to a point where you don't even forget, you sort of just brush it off and go back to sleep. Like it's just that whole conversation, like to go through that sort of lifestyle. And we're not the only reference. That happens across the world. You know, in America, in this current present time, in the UK, across this world, Africa, as countries of that nature where they're into this character that is very real, and you are able to step up in a situation. If you learn to harness that, then you can endure anything in life. And I think that's where I've learned that strength. When I get hit, I just think, oh, well, that's part of the process. I don't think, oh, shit, you know what, I'm going to lay down and I'm going to cry my eyes out and sort of go through this process. Yeah, I might have a cry, but what is the lesson I've learned in that situation? How can I move forward as quickly as possible? Because if I don't keep moving, I ain't surviving. And that was how, you know, that mentality from that younger age, grade on that level. I'm in survival mode constantly. And I heard something huge today. It was about a bloke. He spoke about drugs and completed your journey, or is still on them and trying to got their drugs one day. They'll tell you, no way, man. They'll do anything and everything to get to that point. And if we as human beings can harness that mentality of survival, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get to my goal around peace, success. That's whatever it is you want within your life. Then we're gonna get to a level of different operation. And when you get to that level, it's almost an S mindset where you are operating to make sure that nothing gets in your way. And everything is going to happen that you want to happen within your life. And if you can do that around business, success, relationships, financials, whatever it may be, I can guarantee the operational level every single day will be like this. The only side of that is going to what's important and everything you want within your life. I think that's a great thing for yourself.
Jeffrey, tell me about your first pinch when you were young. You said that, did you go to juvie? Did you at the time? You went, and what was that about? From the break-ins?
Well, the first one, long story short, I jumped the police counter, so it didn't really go down. Technically, we got arrested, but I jumped the police counter and kept running. I did say to everyone, let's jump the counter, and they're like, you're nuts. And I'm like, I'm out. See you later. Growing up, very athletic. Yeah, so basically didn't get caught that time technically, but the first time I went into custody, I think it was just for breaking and entering general. I think, or it might have been something of the nature where I was stealing money. We used to do what we called we distract the shopkeeper, go at the back, get the safe key, open the safe, take the money and go from there. So it might have been something. I honestly can't even remember what my first thing was. That's how, speaking about what we're speaking about before, I just let that stuff go. It doesn't mean anything to me other than the fact that it was something that created maybe to do everything in life. Attitude change how you look at things and your perception and the abundance of what you have will come through every single day. When you wake up, that's a blessing in itself.
I can back you up on that one. Yeah, I had a bit of a scare last year, so it's nice to still be here. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think you're just a touch far from the mic. I think just coming forward slightly, it's a bit better. Yeah, just slightly. Yeah, you're just in that range where it peppers out a little bit, but it should be good. All right, so that's pretty. I find that amazing, man. To think that like it's really hard to think about the first thing you got pinched for. You know, like I think when I was young, I stole a ring when I was like 15 or 16. I felt bad for it, you know, and I remember that so clearly. Like I just never forget it because it was just such a like out of the ordinary experience for me to do that. And here you are, like doing all sorts of things. It's like you can't even remember what you got pinched for the first time. So at such a young age, when you went to juvie, explain that experience to me. Did you feel that you weren't going to be able to provide for your family? Did you feel comforted because you said the conditions didn't bother you at that young age because maybe you had somewhere stable to stay, or what was going through your mind then?
I think that, you think about a young kid going into a centre that they know nothing about, and you go through this process where you get arrested, you get taken into police cells, you sleep there overnight. You get these blankets, they're grey blankets, they're itchy. I remember that. The mattress is just a plastic mattress type thing, so it's sweaty against your skin. And I remember it's always cold. From when I was a kid to an adult and going into police cells, they are always freezing cold. Um, and it's just, people come in, they've been arrested, they're screaming around. You're a 12-year-old kid and not in the same cells, but you're in the cells next to adults that have been arrested, and who knows what they've been arrested for. I look back on it now. If there was someone that had been arrested for
They put you
something
all
of
in
the
the same
nature
cell.
against kids, they were in the next cell. So you'd be like, but at times it depends on the setup of the police station. You could actually see the person, right? Then they take you to the children's court. You go down into the cells there. It was just a sort of lock on a room, and then there was sort of a couple of extra rooms, and you could walk up and down through there. And they'd let you do that, but they'd come and check. They had these sort of bars, not bars, but sort of screens on the window, and then they call you up the court, and from that point you go down. I think, just as a 12-year-old kid to go through that process, that's not. I think it's very traumatic for any kid to endure that. And being able to grab that kid and maybe take him out to a camp, give him some role modeling, because I just didn't have it. I guarantee you I didn't have it. My father was trying to give it to me, and I ran away from it because I thought it was too strict. Because I'd seen the rest of the people in the area staying out till 8 o'clock playing football, as an example. I just wanted to go and play footy. Why can't we do that? Why can't we kick a soccer ball? Why couldn't we just be kids? And I used to think my dad was a prick because, you need to be in by 5, or I'm going to give you a good touch up. Now, looking back on it, for any young kid that does watch this down the track, or any person in general, sometimes people might be telling you what you need to hear rather than what you want to hear. And that's a different conversation altogether. If we don't hear what we want to hear, what ends up happening, we get into a spot where we then say, it's not my conversation because it's about me. And sometimes your best friends are those that will tell you exactly what you need to hear to help you grow and prosper within life. Those that are associates will tell you what you need, what you want to hear, saying, "Yeah, don't worry about it. It's okay. It's fine." And it creates a toxic environment or supports a toxic environment just because maybe they want to be a part of that situation. And a great example is when you go out clubbing. If you've got money, you're the person that's usually going to provide for the rest of the group. And I think they'll tell you whatever you want to hear. So yeah, you're gonna have a great night together. But in general, surround yourself with people that tell you what you don't want to hear, but you need to hear. And when you're able to drop your ego, listen to that conversation, you can really grow and prosper on the flip side of it. But that whole process of a young kid going into custody is just crazy. And then you go through strip searches in that whole process too, from men, grown men, because they're police officers. As a 12-year-old kid, I just like let that sink in. And you've done the wrong thing, but a man checking out a 12-year-old kid's genitals, to me, that's just even talking about it. It's just I never thought about it until just then. That's twisted in itself. Um, Obviously, they didn't have the scanning machines that they do these days. They've got the potential to do that. Hopefully, that's what they do these days. I just seen something actually on social media where 1,000 kids under the age of 13 had been searched, I think, in the last year or something of that nature. I think let that sink in, let that resonate. It's just a crazy experience. And we're shaping and molding these young kids to become people that are going to react because they feel embarrassed, they feel degraded, they feel. And if you've ever been in that situation, you know how you respond, you know the anger that you carry inside. And I think that's crazy as a kid. And we just rolled with the punches. It was just normal to us. And we went, oh, all right, well, sweet, we get searched. And I was getting searched external of being arrested as well. So you get pulled up on the streets and they pat you down and then they take you around the corner so no one could see and say, drop your pants and stuff like that. Really think about that conversation. If we said that about some bloke doing it to a young kid, we'd all blow up. But the police are able to do that and just be totally normal. I think it's just insane.
It is. I mean,
Crazy
I don't
conversation.
know if it happens these days. I hope it doesn't. And but we're talking in the '80s at the time where you're talking about, right? And a lot of things were very, very different back then. And did you witness any sexual abuse for any of the other people that were in juvie from any of the the screws or the police or anything like that?
Absolutely, it was very strong and present back then, I think. And that's where, same thing, you get into these juvenile justice centres that happen in jails. It was in and amongst it. And obviously, you got people like Russell Manson with the Voices of the Survivor now for institutional abuse and they've got 15,000 clients on their book. Let that sink in. It's and there's a comment down there. It's pretty it's hard for if I say to anybody, strip off. I need to see that you're carrying anything, even as an adult. That's a huge conversation, right? And yet we're having these men to these. I was 12, 13, 14. Let's say I was even 14. Still a weird to be stripped and because we grew up in the area, we knew that that was normal, the normal actions of the police. So we just went, all right, sweet. And same thing, if you didn't if you didn't get your pants down, or you didn't show them something, they would get you down and flip you down, and it would, especially back then, uh, getting a beating by the police, even at that age, was just totally normal. And
So the police
and
used
we
to
were
beat the
happy to.
kids at that age too, beat them.
Yeah, it did, but we were happy to do the same back. Like if you beat us, well, we're going to throw bricks and we're going to set the cop cars alight and all of that nature as well. And imagine the anger that was built up in all those kids. Imagine honestly, and all right, the, the role modeling's less, so we just didn't know. We're uneducated. True story. So we're going to make decisions by those that are around us leading the charge. and we just became a byproduct of the environment. It doesn't mean that it's right, but we just went, fuck, well, this is what we do. And people say that's bullshit, mate. I was doing push-ups at Bondi once, and this kid walked over. He's probably the same thing. I've got it on my social media. If you go through my Insta, it's actually on there. Deadly Ninja Warrior, who was on Ninja Warrior, was filming me at the time. I was doing push-ups. This kid came on and started to jump in and do push-ups with me. And it's the old monkey see, monkey do. And your brain's just not formed to be mature enough to understand anything but the actions that you see within front of yourself. And the actions I saw were very destructive, but I thought it was being staunch and being a part of the community. So I acted the same way. And all I was in was, as I said, survival mode. You combine those two, and people can tell me all they want, like I'm not to throw away the key. Why don't we sit down with these people? Funny, if you've got a mental health and well-being program, let's sit down and have a conversation, and I'm going to help you through it. But if kids, 10 or 12 or 14 years old, no doubt I had like mental health and well-being issues at that point in time. Let's lock him up and throw away the key. He's a little shitbag. And I think that's just a conversation in itself. Think about that whole combo. I'm not educated enough. I can't drive a car. I'm not technically meant to be having sex at that age. And yet here I am, apparently not smart enough and not good enough. Lock him up, throw away the key because he's going out to steal, because he wants food, because he's fucking starving and his parents aren't providing. But let's judge this kid and slam him in there. Let's strip him on the way and let's degrade him even more. And I think, and I'm not the, trust me when I say that, I'm not the only one that went through it. Everyone that's been down that path and usually grown up in an area has gone through that same trauma. And we never saw it as trauma. But looking back on it now, it's huge trauma.
Huge trauma, huge. And there was no examples set for you guys to follow. It was just, I mean, the example was each other. So it's just it's a downward spiral effect. It's a very difficult thing to break out of. I can totally see that pattern forming over and over.
Right, it's crazy pattern. Right? And the more people that were on that journey, the more we got into the point where we just went, well, if you're going to be that destructive towards us, we'll just be just as destructive back. And that's where the Redfern riots came in, and the hatred towards police, and the TJ Hickey thing where they rammed him off his bike. He's my cousin. Rammed him off the bike, and then they said that it was by accident. Hit him. He's landed up on a fence, impaled, ended up dying. I think that set the community off, and you've seen the huge riots at that point in time. And same thing. I've listened to. I did a podcast with Gary Jubal, an ex-police officer, and I listened to his podcast when I'm on the road. And there was a police officer that was in amongst those Redfern riots, and he was on the other end, and he got hit by a brick and knocked out and had damage done to him. He had a family, and that's the two sides of the story. Do you reckon it's a great solution to be? We can go at each other, and I used to say this when I was in jail or boys' homes. We can all smash each other. All these different race wars that we had within the jails within New South Wales. So we can smash each other, and we can do all the other stuff to each other that's violent. But what's it going to achieve? Who's going to really win? If I go at you or you go at me, do you think I'll back down or you'll back down? We're all going to have a go because we're in survival mode. But and in the end, it's not a comfortable environment. I was huge. I went into custody on making sure that environment was a safe space, even though we were in there. And what could we do to be better or better ourselves in that situation? Because I started to learn and say, fuck, I don't want this anymore within my life, and I'm starting to learn and grow and prosper to be a better person and try and find a different way to life. And I think I try and be that same voice to these younger kids that are coming through, thinking that it's normal to go down that pathway. It's normal to them because their parents just haven't shown them a different way sometimes, or they've felt that their parents have abandoned them in some way, shape, or form, so they seek loyalty somewhere else. Once they've found that loyalty through a destructive pathway, they'll dedicate their time, energy, and effort towards those people, and you see it. People go down a destructive path, and
sad. Just going to do a quick reset here, guys. This is the Rocstedi podcast, episode 50, with uh, we've got Jeffrey Morgan, ex-bank robber. We're going to go into that in just a second, but I want to let you know that if you want to leave a message, you can go to my Instagram _Rocstedi, leave a message for the show, and we'll be able to play it if you have any questions for Jeffrey as well. Mate, I just want to ask you, how long did you spend in juvie, and what was your attitude when you came out of there? Like I hear quite often that a lot of the guys say it's a school. You know, you start to learn the life of crime, how to do things bigger and better. Is that the same case for yourself?
Absolutely. It was it's a place where you learn things. I think I spent about 5 years in juvenile justice centres as a kid, from probably 12 through to 18. Pretty much most of my teens um, were spent in there. And there was little spurts here and there. I get out, last probably 6 months, go back in, and anyone that sort of grew up in the area, that was the normal cycle of life. And yeah, you just got used to going in, and the more you went in, the more you knew people. So you go in, it's just and
There.
you had a bed, you had food, you had stuff that you didn't have outside. So plus you had people that had shown you this loyalty. So all of a sudden your dedicated time, energy and effort is to these people that actually had your back, versus your parents that you felt had let you down, maybe your community or something of that nature. And I think that's where, if we can put a circuit breaker in amongst that and show kids that there's a better way to life, and we've done that through our program consistently for a long period of time now, then we're changing and saving lives. And these kids, even how they deal with police, people will come in conversation with me knowing how long I've done in custody or the life I've lived, and say, oh, F the police and all of the above. I'm like, mate, as long as you go down that pathway, you're always going to bring some stress and heartache. Do you like being pulled over? Do you like being harassed? And they're like, no. I said, mate, if you change your actions, no one's going to pull you over. And I haven't been, touch wood, haven't been pulled over other than for a breath test at a breath test station. And it's just less stress within your life, and just a better quality of life for that, a lot more inner peace.
Jeff, we've got a message from Mr. Bombastic over in the UK. Let's hear what he's got to say.
That's good.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I wanted to ask because you mentioned briefly about, people going in and out of juvie from a young age or jail. I grew up in a pretty just area, and a lot of my reform friends would tell me, oh, I'd go back because it was comfortable. I got food 3 times. I had breakfast, lunch, and I had this, I had that. I could play basketball, I could play football, I can do this, which they didn't have in the area we grew up in. So do you think that was a major factor in a lot of people going back into juvie, etc.?
Yeah,
Thanks,
absolutely.
Bombastic.
1,000,000%. And like I was lucky on the when my dad wasn't sexually abusive, but I know there's a lot of kids that endure that side of things. Do you reckon that they'd rather be in a home or be in a boys' home or girls' home for that matter? And I think um, I work with kids, and hearing these stories, you can understand why they're so comfortable to go into a home. They get those 3 square meals a day. And as I said, they start to really build these relationships with people who've been through the same trauma. And it's never spoken about. I don't remember any kid saying, oh, this is what's happened to me at home. And they connected like that. It was more like, oh, yeah, what can you do? Oh, you're good at this. Let's connect when we get out. I'm in this area. Look me up. Especially back then, there was no mobile phones. So I don't even know. I think we used to just say, come down Redfern and tell everyone you know me, look me up, and we'd catch up. I think that's how it went down. And people would say, hey, Jeff, do you know this lad? And I'd be like, yeah, I met him. He's sweet. And then he'd walk down from the top of Redfern. And that's basically how it rolled out. And before that, yeah, I'd say when you get to the top, make sure you tell them that you know me, or whoever it was would tell them that, mention this person's name. Otherwise, you'd probably get in a bit of a dusty, bit of a dust, which meant a punch on up the top of the station. and they try and rob you of whatever you had. But it was definitely, something that is a huge consideration. A lot of kids I know that I deal with now take an action to actually get themselves locked up and be in the family home, and that's just a huge conversation in itself as well. If we've got kids that damaged, got to look at a better for us as a society too, because those kids then become dead selves, and if they're carrying that, they're usually surrounded by people who are dead cells as well. And the definition of a dead cell is someone who just doesn't have the belief, confidence, self-esteem to really believe and achieve what they want to within their life. And they'll go down a path of whether it's crime, or, lack of motivation, or those destructive behaviours, habits, and rituals. Um, it's just a sad journey, and I think, as I said, going into jail because that as a young kid, it was there. It was beautiful. And, there was a swimming pool, and even though you'd swim once a week, we didn't have a swimming pool in our house or the area. I shouldn't say that. Like when I say that, in the backyard of somebody's house, we had
Easily
to walk up to
accessible.
the
Yeah.
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 So we were sort of quite comfortable going into custody, man. It was that's just a sad journey.
Mm. So what about when you came out? So did you start to build a name or a reputation for yourself on the streets at that stage?
Yeah, more so around the money that I was making already. And I
Right.
was very innovative in time. So I got a lot of, the ram raids back in the day started that whole journey. We went down a
Where you
pathway of
steal a car, smash into a shop, grab.
luxury cars. And we would date, I should say, Peru was known for Porsches, uh, Ferraris, like stuff of that nature, doing things, whether it was broad daylight, whether it was night, late at night. Back then, a lot of duty frees, watches, jewelry, that would sit in the window back then and get in at night, turn the alarm off, go in and obviously, do a lot of stuff in that regard, then sell it on. And that, they weren't barring them up, they weren't fixing them up, and that went on for a period of time, and that led to I went into a transition. Searching was always in between, as I said before. Distract the shopkeeper, go out the back, and mate, you could get anything from couple of thousand to a couple of 100,000, depending on the type of shop and type of business. From the stories that went around, I'm not saying I did that. I'm just going to say the stories went around, and then you'd have people. Then it went, for me into bank snatches, which I can talk about because I got charged for, which was basically you'd walk into a bank, someone was depositing a huge amount of money, you jump literally across the side of them, snatch the money, run out of the bank, and same
We'll back up.
principle. There were,
Let's back up there for a second. I
yep,
want to go into that a little bit. So you would be staking out banks for big
yep.
transactions with people, grabbing money from the banks, putting it in their own little money bags to walk out, and then you jump them.
No, so they'd be depositing it to the
Right.
bank, usually I think a business in general. And it'd be pot luck. You just pull up, walk the area, and we were that fit. We had a crew that was very fit. We all trained together. We all kept ourselves, even in custody, and then basically park the car blocks away, walk the local street, walk past every bank, and you could see out through the glass and go, there. You wouldn't even say something. We'd have a bit of a signal. We'd then go and do what we had to do. I'd give them a signal, bang on this particular day, bang, jump across the side of the person literally, which meant that they weren't in the counter. Back then they had these little counters like this, so you literally, when you jumped, you almost shoved them. Grab as much as you possibly could and run out of the bank. And obviously some days were better than others. This day in general, I think we did something like 7 bank snatches. I can't recall, as I said, but I got charged for them all, whatever it says on that sheet. And each one could be 5,000 to 30,000 to 50 to 100 to ends the amount that was being deposited, and whether it was for us and became something that everyone started to get into. Same thing, it was something that I innovated and then people started to get in and do themselves. I think.
Well, what was that like back then? I mean, we're talking now probably what, late 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, I would have said it would have been. I would have been 88 because I was really
88, late
at
80s.
that point. I remember it was in Brisbane. There was the um, 88 Expo, and I remember, same thing. By then I was up and running, and it was huge, and that you combine all those things, the ram raids, the bank snatches, the searching, and the money that was flowing in, and some other streams of destruction that were going down the path. Well, then I had a lot of money coming in. Got into just some crazy shit at that time.
So you mentioned you had hit 7 banks in a day. I mean, are you getting adrenaline rushes out of this? Is there any fear? But back then it was very different. Or of course, there's no cameras back then. There's a different scene completely. But 7 in a day. I mean, after the third or the fourth or the fifth, you were thinking maybe they're going to be waiting at another bank at the sixth, but the seventh. Wow, I find that fascinating.
That's that. I spoke about this before, and I think when you think about that whole concept, to not have, I don't remember, like so all week, it was all happening in Sydney metro sort of area. We'd go from one side of the town to I'd mix it up. What we did know is that through the police scanner that we had a lot of people looking for us at the point in time, but we were in a car that I was driving at the time, and I knew that car wasn't going to be a problem if we got in a police pursuit. We had different, yeah, same conversation. Even thinking about, we had an idea that if we got chased, we'd drive by helicopter or police motorbike police. We'd drive to central the tunnels to Red, and like that way we'd take out the police helicopter or motorbike copper, and that was starting to happen at 14, 13 years of age. Kids at that age knew that principle and knew that lesson. If you get chased by the police and it's a helicopter or motorbike, get the central station jail. And the same principle, 7 banks in one day, we're just going between both, and all we're doing was counting up how much we had. The reason why I was all about making as much money as I possibly could, so I didn't have to do as much as I possibly could. But the problem with that was, I think, like in just survival mode, and people don't say, "Hey, Morgs, you want to go out and do something?" Yeah, no problem. And it was, the same way people messaging each other, want to catch up for coffee tomorrow. We were doing the same thing, and yep, sweet mate. And everyone would just meet at Redfern, and you'd say, "Boys, you want to go out today?" And that much easier. I think it's just a crazy conversation in itself, right? Think about these young kids that built. And I see it now in we're the Northside crew, boys, whatever you want to call them. They're doing a lot of the same thing, a lot of luxury cars, and I think they're joyriding in general. I don't know what they're doing. I wouldn't have a clue, but they're obviously doing some stuff. Because same thing, even on their TikTok, they're flashing money around. I'd love to go up there and have a conversation with anyone that's from Northside or up in Brisbane that knows anyone from that area, youth services. Reach out, have that convo, because I understand how these kids are just set where that's not even a thought process. And people think, how do these kids do that? They're just thinking survival. One of the parents might be having a real crack at it, and they just feel abandoned, even if it's from one parent or the parents splitting up, something of that nature. That just sends them down this plan. I think that's you to be able to help out.
So, what did your crew consist of back then? How many guys were there? Did you have specific roles when you were doing this? And did it escalate from just the snatches to more?
Yeah, like so. Um, I suppose it just depends on who you went out with. Yeah, like I was one of them people. I was whatever you want to call it, jack of all trades. I would drive, I would jump, I would, and same. I'd drive, but I'd park, and we were confident. We'd park 4 blocks away, and we'd all train. We'd all the MMA wasn't around at that point in time, but we'd literally get into a point where it was insane. Park whatever 4 blocks away, basically run to that car after a bank snatch. Over time, the bank snatchers, we started to say, if we can jump on the counter, why couldn't we jump across the counter and just take more money? And I think that's where it led to this transition into bank robberies. And at that point in time, it was just an insane transition from a kid who broke into a canteen just to get food and then got into this sort of, and this is a true story, Rob, that I was doing something wrong. I was like, I'm just surviving like everybody else. Why do I have to go through this juvenile justice center? Why do I have to go to court? In my head, it was like, I'm not really thinking about doing it, so I'm going to go out and do it myself. And it was just, it's just a crazy conversation. Someone's got to step in and have that conversation.
Were your parents aware of what you were doing at the time?
My parents were, my father didn't really know. My mother probably knew. They didn't know what I was doing. They just knew I was getting up in trouble. That's probably a better way of putting it, because they didn't know I was doing any form of crime or what type of crimes I was doing. My dad used to say, do you think you're a gangster doing the stuff that you're doing? And he didn't even understand it or know. He'd never come from that life. His parents worked hard. He worked hard. He was a baker. Come across from Austria, moved to Australia by just him and his brother, and they basically had a crack at life and got into being a baker. So his ethics were around hard work and providing for the family.
European family.
Yeah,
strict. I can see that from, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's strictness. And this is for any kids that watch this out there, or any people, we feel strict in one sense, as much as sometimes it depends on the delivery of how you do that. And sometimes if you can teach people there's a benefit and value behind why we're having this conversation, you can really change the outcome on the other side for the person. Because usually when someone's strict to ourselves, we'll put up a brick wall, right? And we're like, that I'm not going to listen to you. You're being an ass or prick or whatever you want to call the person. And that's what I thought of my father. But so many of his lessons have taught me who I am today. So many people, that's just a priceless journey in itself. You look at my sister, she's so disciplined, a jockey. She's absolutely killed it. And big shout out to you, my sister Sky. She's an absolute champion. She's taught me so many great things of value as a human, but also just being in that presence, man.
Aware of these things, but just couldn't control you at the time, or just didn't know how to deal with it at the time.
I think Mum was dealing with a lot of trauma. Australia's got a history, and a dark history, which is a true history. And before anyone gets into that whole concept from that period of time, and I'm talking the journals of those that were around, government policy, so forth. I think my mother, from everyone I've spoken to, was a very, very staunch in being proud and saying we're going to drink with everybody, or we're going to be on the same side of the pool. There was a split, black on one side, white on the other side, and anyone that knows human beings, love, empathy, kindness, and respect, those four things, treat you that no matter how they are, even if they're racist to yourself or negative to yourself, or they want to, just situation, and use those four words to make sure that's how you respond to that individual. And she taught me a lot of good values, but she was very, I think she just loved me and let me do my thing. And that was her way of showing me she loved me, and dealing with so much trauma herself and trying to be so proud for our people at that point in time. And we just lost that journey. We sort of got lost in transition together. Yeah, she cooked meals and was there for me in that sense, but didn't realize what I was doing when I left the house.
Things are escalating.
Yeah.
We're starting to rob banks. Tell me, do you remember the first bank you actually robbed? Were there weapons involved? What happened there?
Long story short, I wasn't meant to go that.
Or long story long, whatever you want.
Yeah. Probably long story long, but I wasn't meant to go that day. I was going to be the consultant. Gave advice something previously where I walked out in this, the surveillance team had taken photos of me. I was pretty photos of me in this. Later, that person had done something. They were in the same clothes. I beat that trial because the police officer had written down I had horizontal stripes on my shirt, had vertical stripes, and said it couldn't be him. It was similar to him, but you've got it mixed up. That's how I ended up beating that case. And then I think so I walked out of the house. I had no intentions to go. Same thing. I was wearing the clothes, didn't cover me, didn't have a change of clothes, which was the old trick. You'd walk out, you'd go to a place, to a new thing, and off you went. Now, this day, I walked out of the house, had no change of clothes, had no intentions. Someone, long story short, I had a bank behind, technically, left in the vault, came out, the manager's there. I said, mate, if you don't move out of the way.
You got stuck.
Technically, I was. The vault's very hard to shut. It's a heavy, heavy door.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, it just takes time, and it'd be very hard. If someone pushed back, it would stop it straight away.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, manager's there. I'm like, move out of the way. I ended up moving out of the way. Went back up, got to the car. I wasn't meant to be a part of this. We jumped in the car. Car has no petrol in it. Getaway car has no petrol in it.
Man.
It was just a big schmozzle. Like I said, wasn't meant to
One
be
fuck
there.
up after another.
Wasn't my crew, wasn't my nothing. I was going to get a kickback or a consultancy fee for the advice I'd given. As I said, it just went down. I was listening to it, just didn't happen. I ran in, and it was just a big schmozzle. We get away with the bank robbery. We go to a place, we're about to jump out. I turn back, a bloke in the back says, him, the driver ends up speeding. because he's panicking. I turned because I realised the car was going a little bit quick. I said, mate, slow down. Relax, we're away. We're a couple of suburbs away. We're going to dump it. In that process, highway patrol car goes past. We're speeding, does a U-turn, chases us for speeding. Realises this is the car that was seen at the bank. I served twice for that bank robbery.
Right.
That point in time, I was really well, and I just shouldn't have gone, shouldn't have been there. I was caught in the same, got caught with the money from the bank. The name of the bank was still on the plastic bags we'd taken from the bank, which might have this particular bank. So there was just, mate, you weren't getting off it.
Caught red-handed.
Yeah, pretty much done it. The rest was history. 5 years later, because during that period, a lot of the boys were getting caught for 3 banks, 5 banks, and getting 18 months, which was ridiculous. 3 years with that. So I was figured, mate, if I can pull a good judge, I'll get the same thing. Unfortunately, at the time, I'm pretty sure it was over 3 years or 5 years. It might have been 5 years. So the minimum based around I had the potential to change. 7 years on top.
Right, so you're doing it now, 5 to 7 years, which you did 5. You're still thinking criminal mind? You wanting to change at this point in time, or you want to come out and just get rich again and keep doing it?
Mate, I'm doing everything I possibly can on a criminal nature. The first time I went to jail was 18. At this point in time, it was 1997, so it would have been 24. So I stayed out 5 years at that point in time, which was a good run. And as I said, I was in a good spot. It just didn't, good. Long story short, while we're on the Oval, Johnny Killick, one of the only helicopter escape in Australia at the time.
Is that the one?
It was insane.
Wow,
like,
holy fucking shit, that's crazy, man.
Like, just to be, man, and you got to understand, and they shot at the helicopter. And Johnny will tell you this same story. Where he was, where the helicopter was, the tower was behind him, and I was in between both. So you could hear the bullets zinging down through the air, like bang, and then.
Were you witnessing this whole thing happening, or?
Yeah,
or you just at the
absolutely.
prison? Oh wow, okay. Tell me what you're
I
seeing.
was on the
Yeah,
Oval.
absolutely.
No, I just scored a try. Johnny even remembers I scored a try down the other end of the field playing touch football. We were walking back, and basically on the way back, I seen this helicopter that was flying around. We're walking back to the 50-meter mark. They were going to kick off, and it's flown around twice, I think. Then it landed in the section next door. I thought it was a golf course. I now know it to be a different place. It's like a golf course-ish. They actually play frisbee golf on it. But next minute, back up again, and it flies. And then it lands in the jail. And I remember turning to my brother, saying to him at the time, "What a place to run out of petrol." I literally, I didn't even go. I go, "Fuck, what a place to run out of petrol, this bloke." And next minute, Johnny's like undone his jumper, and I said to Johnny, "Do you realise?" He undone his jumper, and he went load his joint, and he just jumped on the chopper, and the rest is history. You hear his story and tell it. Ops ran over. He pulled out the gun, and they got near the chopper, seen the gun, done a U-turn, and legged it. And, he was facing a fence as such, so it had to sort of do a U-turn, but we didn't realise at the time. I was like, oh, it's too heavy, it can't take off. But all he was doing, he was just sort of turning the chopper around so it could take off and have the room. And as it turned around, it was facing the sort of to it, and then they shot it at, I think it was 3 to 5 times. I can't remember. Johnny on his podcast, I suppose.
It's one of the first episodes that come out.
And mate, I just had this vision of that chopper in the movies. They shoot at the chopper blows up, and then it tips over, and the blade is flying everywhere and chops people in half. Like, man, I was like literally thinking, this is insane. I feel in a movie. It took off, and made every yard before Johnny had gone out and said, this is so and so, he's a helicopter pilot. I was like, okay, how are you? And then the next day I was like, fuck, now it all makes sense. Bang, like in my head. Probably just priceless, just crazy shit. And you just take it with a grain of salt, and you don't realise the impact it probably had on your mindset around plot where people are shooting with and you're sort of in between those shots flying past, which is insane.
Absolutely.
We got no counselling out of that either. Not one of us.
Back then too, right? They didn't offer that sort of stuff, did they? That was just new. There was no like option to go and get your head read after. It was just deal with it, or there's not even deal with it. It's just like shut the fuck up, get back to your cell type of thing, right?
That was it. That was pretty much it. Get in your fucking cells. I think we got locked in for about a week after it. And no one, even police, didn't come and say, oh, did you see what happened on that or something? Not that they would have got anything. They probably went, fuck, it's going to be a waste of time. Don't give them the opportunity to sort of lap it up. And no one ever came to see us. They just locked us in.
Yeah. It's pretty wild, man.
Crazy, eh?
We have a message from the King. He's dropped one in during that helicopter talk, so let's hear what he's got to say.
Man, did you just say a helicopter escape?
Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out what that conversation was between the bank robber and the tour guide. Like, look, man, just need to make a small detour. I'll give you a big tip, man. I'll give you a 5-star rating.
Well, actually, the full story, because we won't give it away because it's on Russell's podcast. So if you want to hear the details from his perspective, the stick up, you can find it on Spotify and iTunes. Go and check it out. It's one of the first episodes. It's a cracking story. So go have a listen to that if you get a chance, guys. And give it a 5-star rating too, by the way. Help Russell out.
Yes, absolutely. And I Catch Killers is another one that Johnny's been interviewed on. Gary Juglin, and he's an ex homicide detective who now has a podcast, and quite ironically interviews a lot of the ex-criminals that have turned their lives around. Johnny, the bloke who actually did the helicopter escape and was a bank robber as well, has turned his life around and an author now and does great things within the community. So big shout out to yourself, Johnny, and Russ, for doing great things.
Wonderful, yeah. From what I heard as well, it was really. I can't recommend it enough, guys. Okay, so I know it's getting a little late for you there, and so I don't want to keep your whole hope if you're cool to keep going, but I want to sort of know your 5-year stints up. You come out, and you're learning as much as you can still, because for me, knowing you from this point in time, I've only met you recently. Like, I was finding it hard to even believe you're a crook in any way in the past. You're so nice, man, and you're always giving this great advice, and I'm like, holy shit, really? And so I really want to deep dive and delve into your childhood as you got to this point, and understand what was going through your mind, and understanding you a lot more now about the whole survival that was kicking in. But obviously that that turn or that shift hasn't quite happened yet, because you've come out trying to learn still more criminal activities at the time.
Absolutely.
And just to state for the listeners too, no one's glorifying any of this stuff, but to
100%.
relive and hear these stories, right? They are fascinating, regardless. I just want to give Jeffrey the permission to totally open up about these stories, which he's been doing without there's no judgment in any way, because this is from one side of the spectrum swinging completely over to the other, to where he is at the moment, and it's just like so fascinating about how positive you are with your life right now, to come from a place like that. It's wild, man. That's quite a shift. So I'm really enjoying hearing your story, how it's coming together at the moment. So thank you for sharing this point so far.
People always say that. They're like, man, I just can't even picture you as that person. I can't believe that you're a bank robber. I can't believe that. They're just like, it just doesn't match up with who you are now.
Doesn't. Yeah.
And yeah, I think I was just always, just in survival mode, and I honestly thought I was just making money for my family. Once I had my first kid, just prior to being arrested for that bank robbery, um,
Right. So
my
before that
life
5 year
started to
stint,
change.
you had a kid just before then. Before you
On
went in.
that, actually, I lied. She fell pregnant and she had the kid when I was in custody, so I didn't see my son
Right.
born.
Right.
And I think that was unfortunate. I think if I saw my kid born at that point in time, I did see my daughter born, which was 2 years prior. I think if I seen my son born in that sense as well, I think life would have changed right there as well. I think I was just at that tipping point. But because I went into custody, I just wanted to learn more. Just so destructive, mate. Every interaction
Well,
with
can you go
police, I
into that a
just,
little bit? Can I ask you,
yeah,
like, the time that your son was born while you were in prison, how did you feel? Because you had of course, no way of being there. All that initial contact, all those initial, because you'd already experienced what it was like with your daughter, obviously.
mm,
Did you try and block that out? Did it upset you? I mean, proud moment mixed with what emotions?
I think, man, you got to be proud when you have a kid, right? But you can't be proud of. I think it's mixed emotions because you're sort of proud to have a kid, but not proud to be a good father. Because if I was a good father, I would have been there. So you it's really push and pull, I suppose, with the emotions. Like, oh, how good is it to have a kid? But how shit am I as a father? Um, because I should be there for. I was married at the time. I was married 15 years. Um, just stuff of that nature. You look back on it, and it was so destructive, and um, yeah, I'm not proud of those moments, and to this day I try my very best to make that up. Um, my relationship with my son's been damaged, so harshly from those years. I'm still trying to repair that. My relationship with my daughters, still when we do things on a regular basis, catch up, eat, hang out, watch, my grandkids play. He's playing as an example this Saturday in the grand final. I'll go watch that, but like, yeah, I let them down. So it's a real mixed emotion, right? And not to see your son born, I think that connection is very important at that first opportunity. um, they can hear your voice, they can attach to you. Those first 5 years, from the studies I've done over the years now, they're the formative years. I wasn't there, I was in custody. So how he was built, in one way, is really good because his mother was a very placid and good natured person, and you can see all that within his nature. And when to the point where when he started playing football, I literally picked him up one. I said, "Son, you got to get a bit of oomph in you." And he goes, "Oh, I'll show you oomph." And I said, "Let me show you oomph." We're at Bondi. I picked him up and we're in the water. Picked him up and really threw him. And I threw him that hard. He had to come up and he was crying. He walked into the beach, and I was like, "Whoa!" And I think it's just, I think if I'd grown up wrestling him and doing stuff of that nature, he would have said, "Bring it on! I'll run at you again." And I just didn't realize, and that made me realize that, oh shit, my son's built a particular way where he's learned a lot from his mother, and it does, it beats you up as a parent that you're not And I was, even as a kid, I wasn't good enough in my eyes for my parents, and they abandoned me. So I went out and survived, and those that showed me that I was good enough gave me the loyalty. With those on the same path, they were surviving themselves. So we destruction found destruction, and the only outcome was going to be more destruction. My kids were on the back end of it. As I said, I wasted uh, when they were old enough, when they were born, I spent 12 years of their lives in custody. And, that's not a good father. That's the reality of that. I own that. But all I can do is recognize it and say, what's the lessons that I learned at this point in time to be a better um, parent, person, moving forward. And that's all I can do. And as I said, I still, and my relationship with my son's damaged quite a lot. And I can text and get nothing back. And that kills me because I, I don't blame him. I blame myself. Not blame, but I just know that my actions made him feel that particular way. And I think I'll keep trying and I'll keep putting myself out there. And at the right time, I just hope it happens. I just hope in between that nothing happens to myself, or my son in that way, shape, or form, because life will be life, and we just don't know what could happen when I wake up tomorrow. And I can only put it out there. I love my kids, and that's what ultimately changed my life at that point in time. I got to a point where I just went, fuck, man, my kids mean more than this crew I'm with. I ran with the same crew for over 20 years. In the criminal world, anyone that knows that, that's a huge time to run together, not dob each other in, not sleep with each other's girlfriends, not rip each other off. So weirdly, we have these values, morals, and belief around the criminal code, but around normal life, we're just different. And I wish I'd had those values, morals, and beliefs around how I treated those that love me, my kids, and we can all learn. And as I said, you can't change it. You can just learn from a situation. That's a huge lesson for everybody out there. If I focus on that trauma, and it is trauma to lose contact with my son, um, and I think about how, you're a shit parent and all of that, I'll beat myself up and I won't want to get out of bed. But if I can be a great role model and do what I'm currently doing and keep reaching out and hoping at some point in time he sees that I'm a better person through my actions, um, we might build that relationship again. And it would mean the world to me. So you just got to keep showing up and learn from the lessons of the trauma, no matter how deep they are, because that's how you grow and prosper.
I probably just want to throw my own little opinion in there if I can with you, man. That's
Yep.
you know, I think it's kind of in a way lucky that we have these sort of platforms these days to have these stories being told, because no doubt there'll be at some point in the future where your kids will be able to go back and listen to these sort of times, and and really get to know you, see the lives that you're helping with people around everywhere. So any like so-called wrongdoings, for lack of a better word, in the past, uh, really can see the person that you are now, and hopefully it will in them to open their mind more to um, come forward and deal with that trauma and situation. So I think it's important that you're having these talks right now, man. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think same thing, Rock. You look at, I think I do a lot of what I do now because of the lessons I learned as on that journey, um, to help others so they don't endure what I did. Whether it's as a parent, these young kids making these decisions now that are affecting or going to affect their lives forever. They might get into that position, partner falls pregnant in custody, and you will regret it. You'll get to a point where you sit back and go, far out, I wish I'd been different within my life. Let me be the lesson for yourself that you don't have to endure that pain where your son or daughter disconnects with yourself. And it's happened in, I've seen that in the criminal world, jail justice and jail system so much, where the parents lose that. It's hard because the integrity of the conversation or the trust levels goes out the window, right, Rock? And that's a hard thing when you break the trust of an individual, and especially your own kids. They don't feel that they're worthy. Or I've same thing I felt with my father. You abandoned me, and or mother. you abandoned me and I'm not good enough, even though they had great intent and they were always trying to help me as best as they possibly could. I think that's a huge conversation. Even as a young kid are going to impact as an adult later on, especially because if it becomes a habit and ritual, think of it like this: if you're every year people New Year's resolution, I'm going to lose weight, get fit, and they fall over with the intentions are to actually carry that out and be successful with that. And the same principle, if you're in a criminal world, you've got destructive habits and rituals. By the time Mrs. falls pregnant, you go, shit, I want to change my life. You're not just going to do it in a week. Some people like jump out and do it in a week, but a very small percent that time. It's only to the point where they start to see them on the visits, their kids are crying. I had a place where I was locked up in Melbourne. TikTok Gary was with me at the time, and my son had come out to visit, and he's like, I want you to come home, Dad, and he's crying, and he's pulling me, and they're grabbing him, and I'm like, you want to put it in your head, but at the same time, you're in custody, and they're trying to get the kid out, and I was like, man, I can't do this anymore. And at that point in time, there was a bit of a turning point just prior to that as well, where the crew had, we all had a little agreement. If someone could get off the charge, and we were pinched on it, we couldn't get off. We were basically going to make sure. We went to court and said, oh no, Rock wasn't there. No, we didn't see. No, he left at some point in time. Long story short, I was that person in that last bank robbery where I served 7 years in Melbourne. I asked them to come to court, and two of them said I'd need to ask my solicitor so I don't fuck myself up. And I was like, well, if that's where we're at, then now's my time to get out of this world, because of the loyalty I had to this segregation, because I had a mobile phone in myself, and there's a professor from the universities. You look like a smart guy. You want to do a university degree, and at that point in time, everything sort of ducks aligned, and the impact I started to think about seeing my son cry like that, and mate, the rest was history. Served the 7 years. I had I still had the parole from the Sydney offence. So I'd written to him. I said, "Fuck this! I want to change my life." I'd written to Sydney and said, "Hey, I'm in Melbourne. I've been arrested. I've obviously been. They knew. They breached me." And I said, "Mate, come and get me when I get out." When I went to walk out the gates, I said, "Oh, the New South Wales corrections here." They said, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Mate, no one's here." And they said, "No one's here for you." Walked out the gate. I was like, "Fuck." So walked out of the gate. I wanted to change my life. I had to hand off in, so I rang up Parramatta Police in Sydney.
This is sorry, I'm a little confused here. This is
Yeah,
so you did a 5 year stint. You got charged for
got
seven.
out.
You did five in the bottom, so you got out, and this is a separate time.
Yeah, went to Melbourne, robbed another bank.
Right,
Got
right, right. Well, before we go to that, Jeffrey, I just want to.
yeah,
We've got three messages sitting here for you
go
from when we
hard.
were just talking about your son. Let's knock them on the head first, and then I want to go back to that so there's no confusion. We got two from the King and one from Mr. Bombastic. Here we go.
Hey, I got a question for you. It might be, if it's too personal, you don't have to answer it. I just wanted to put it out there and ask you anyway, see how open you are about this. Did your kids get mad at you for being a bank robber? Like when they were old enough to realize that daddy's not here because, he's a bad guy or whatever, or he did bad things or something like that? Because I can imagine that in a kid's mind, it'd be like, why doesn't he just have like that, I don't know. It's just a question I have for you. Feel free to or don't. It's up to you, man. But enjoying the story anyway, regardless.
Great question. I never. My daughter's like a true crime freak. She loves podcasts. She loves that sort of Netflix and all that. Um, and good kid, never got in trouble or anything of that nature. Probably pissed her mum off. We were girlfriends, but in general, good kid. But I've never really asked him that question, and I never really I always told my kids that I was in the army, because in Australia, when you're locked up, you wear green, and the army here, or yeah, army in general, is sort of green. So I lied to my kids to pretend, in the sense I just didn't want them to know I was locked up. And I suppose by the time I came home, they were both. I came home last 2010, 97. So they were at that point in time 13 years of age, 13 and 11, I think, at that time. And I just started to turn my life around after I'd come home from the army. By the time they'd realised, I got back with a wife, so I didn't really get to sort of discuss that. Many years later, so I burnt bridges with both my daughter and son after that. But I turned my life around. I was being really good. Hence why my partner, or my wife at the time, had said, I've got to tell you something. I just didn't think you were. I thought you were going to go back to that life about a year down the track. Look, I cheated on you, and it was happening in our bed. I was just like, this is messed up. I can't be here. I'm going to do my thing. You do your thing. I'll look after the kids. I'll still be a great father. We came to an agreement that I'd tell the kids that we grew apart. So I don't, and we moved forward. And I think that relationship at that time, so they'd never known, and I don't think they've ever been proud about it. My daughter's intrigued by it. She's never really sat and said, "Hey, Dad, what was it like?" Or I think she just listens to the podcasts that I've been on over the years, and said, "You were crazy," or yeah, she'd say stuff of that nature. But in general, I think she's just proud that I've changed my life.
Sure.
I'm still learning every day, because that relationship,
Sure.
even with my daughter, only started probably 5 years back or something. She might say otherwise, but I tried to start it up, but about, might even been less than that. It's only been a couple of years, in between 5 and 0 years, where I've been able to build that relationship with my daughter. And so I think it's more about building that relationship than worrying about why did you do it, or why didn't you have a normal job. I think she's now heard what's going on, and sort of maybe she'll digress at some point in time. She's got 5 kids. They're pretty young, so that consumes her as well. I think, maybe when I get a bit older, she might sit there and ask me some questions about it all. But it's a great question, because I like to put it, if my daughter is listening, there's a good chance. And you want to ask those questions, and any of my kids, my son as well, by all means, ask that question, and I possibly can, because I think that's how you can grow as an individual. And that's for any human out there. Be vulnerable. Vulnerability is strength. I think so many people don't share stuff because people are going to judge you. I've got a saying: people, what people say about me isn't my business. It's the awareness that I have of myself, and that means I basically focus on the internal and let go of the external, what I can't control. And to me, the only thing that I'm focused on is those in the inner circle, my family, those close friends that are real to myself, and those businesses that we work with. The rest of it's sort of, in the nicest way, external. That is people in general, associates, or people that you have sort of some interactions with, until you build that relationship with. Me and Rock have met each other just recently. He's already got a great nature, good attitude. I love that he gets on and does the podcast. It's late now in Sydney, but after he tucks his kid into bed, and that, to me, tells me the type of person he is. That's the type of person I sort of want to hang around more often than not, and learn
Thanks, mate.
from, and hopefully transfer those skills across to my kids as well. And that's why these podcasts, or interactions with human beings, give us the skills to see some stuff that I never seen when I was a kid.
Appreciate those kind words. Thank you too, by the way, brother. That's nice, man. Yeah, they mean the world to me. That's for sure. Uh, we have three. We've got two from
Go home.
Bombastic. He was next. Here we go.
Jeffrey, mate. Just a quick comment. It's not a question or anything. I sort of understand where you're going through in terms of the kids, not 100%, but to an extent. I just want to say, there will be a day around, and they'll be so fucking proud of you. I just know that from a podcast, but I know it as a fact. What you're doing now negates anything you've done before, and that's a fact. You're actively making a difference in so many people's lives, so many kids' lives. Your kids are going to turn around and say, my dad did that. That's my dad. And they'll say it with proud, they say it with their chest. So yeah, keep it going, bro.
Thanks,
Champion. We dealt with our program, and I've the program out of my head side of myself, and I think this is a deep dive, and that's why I loved and agreed to get into this podcast because I knew we were going to approach it from a different angle, and it's a lot of questions that I've never been asked, and the fact that people questions Mr. Bombastic and Elvis, and if you're truly vulnerable, then you'll answer these questions. And you know what? If it means that I have to take ownership and say that I wasn't a good father during that period, what were the lessons I can learn from that to be better in the future for myself and everybody else? Because until you do that and you dig deep within yourself, you're always something else. Oh, you know, the police, the government, the environment, and all that. And I'm not saying it didn't play a role, but I'm the controller. When I'm old enough, I'm the control of my journey, and I'm going to write the new chapters. We've dealt with 1 million people, kids,
Wow.
soldiers, athletes, corporates, communities, and we've had a 93%. Do the maths on that. We've changed so many people's lives, and it's like, you know, one rock into a pond. You throw that rock, creates a bunch of ripples, and that ripple effect goes out into the community or the environment that person's in, and their vibe will attract the tribe. And if their vibe is something of a beacon of hope, and you look at TikTok Gary, he's attracted so many people. You spoke about it at the start of this skunk gang. That's Gary's gang, just to be clear. And when I say gang, he's creating a gang of hope. Those that have been through some
Hope crew,
struggles.
hope dealers. Yeah, really
Yeah,
positive.
he's a
That's
hope
great.
dealer, not a dope dealer
Yeah, I
anymore.
love
And
it.
he was
I
a
love it.
dope dealer. Love that. 500,000 people. That's huge. It's
It's
massive.
huge.
It's,
Massive, man. That's a lot of lives, you know.
But
That's
the biggest ones that, you know, me and my daughter, as I said, have really built something where it's still on how to be a father. I wasn't there during those younger years. I was there for 5 years at the start of my daughter's life, and then I got locked up, and I'd done so much, and hopefully some of the stuff that I instilled in her at that young age, wife at the time instilled a lot of the qualities in our son, and he ended up ducks at the school, which means he was the best in his school, which his name's up on the board within the school. He was number one in that plan in his region, which means when they did the testing for a particular area within a state, he was he just kept building, and they're the two people that, out of all those people, I'd love to have changed them. Not changed, but had that impact the most on. All you can do is keep showing up at the right.
Mate, keep doing what you're doing because it's I'm sure it's going to, you know, I think Bombastic's right with that. But we got a couple more messages here. We've got one from Elvis.
Well, as far as my previous question goes, man, you kind of touched on it there with your story. I got that in at the beginning, but I'm glad you're sharing and being open with all this stuff, man. It's going to help people out a lot of ways, you know. Every day we got a choice to do the right thing and the wrong thing. And the right thing is rarely the easy thing to do, but it's always the best choice in every situation, really.
Love that.
Thanks,
Uh, on that, like, expansion, be better, not bitter in a situation. Because being bitter, who carries it? Like, even if someone projects something onto you in life, um, who carries that bitterness about that situation? The other person, probably like myself as a bank robber, against like the world mentality. I just didn't realize what I was doing, and I never stopped to think about it. I was just always in this survival mode, and I never paused for a moment. And when I finally paused and started to look at my son being pulled away from the office, it's where the light bulb went, right? And I think until people challenge the old program version of yourself, if it's not serving you on a level of life, and for those that don't know, I'm a mental health and wellbeing consultant, nutritionist, qualified trainer. Put those together with all the stuff that you've heard already, and that's how we built our program. 67 different modules, everything from unpacking trauma, dealing with stress, conflict resolution, habits and rituals, nutrition, to really get an individual to perform at a really high level around habits and rituals that you carry in your everyday life. And the way we do that is we make sure that you tap into the best version of yourself. And as I said, you'll write that out. We'll support you on that journey and go through that. Now, going back to that little conversation, and as I said, whether that's an athlete around the foods that you eat, the thought process of you're doing enough. And I'm sitting down having this conversation and saying, mate, how you can get past that. Here's how you can get the extra 1% of yourself. It's through the lessons you learn from a situation or an experience or an environment. So understand that when you focus on the problem, you'll always find pain. When you focus on the solution, you will always find happiness. It's a saying I put together, and I think it's something that's so poignant in this society. When we have trauma, stress, heartache, pain come into play, we lay and we know how to deal with it. To the point where we become a situation. I know a situation where a girl's been treated badly by the bloke, and she keeps going back on a regular basis because that's where, in the nicest way, she feels her level's at. And if this bloke shows her just one level above that, but the rest of the time is so toxic below that, she still remembers this component of that situation. And
Her
that
focus is
basically,
on grasping that because she doesn't want to. She's too afraid of the pain she might feel by not being with him, so she's sticking with the familiarity, not knowing that it's going to be less in the long run. It's almost like
100%.
focusing on, right. You've got you can have to look around the room and try to remember everything that's brown in the room. You look around the room, you can 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Your eyes, right, and what are all the blue things? It's like, oh fuck, I wasn't looking at the blue, I was looking at the brown. You're not even focusing on all the
100%.
blue things that are in the room, and it's like
Love that.
that's where their focus is.
On that one before, and it's where energy will flow where your goes, right? And that's a huge saying. And I think please understand, you might as well focus on something positive. It's your life, and the projection of some other person, you might call them a prick, asshole, whatever you want to call them. Even saying that prick, asshole, or something of that nature, think of the conversation I'm starting to sort of evoke towards anger or something of that nature. And then same thing, my energy is going to flow towards anger. So I just go, what's the lesson that I learn out of that traumatic situation? And people are like, fuck, that's fucked up. 15,000 people who have sexual abuse within institutions, and Russell has used his own to turn it into a positive to help these 50,000 people see a better way to life and hopefully stay on this planet, because we know it has a mental impact on people in general. That is a positive and a lesson out of a super negative situation. But talk negative. The more we talk about anything, the more we hardwire that habit, and that becomes, as I said, that responsive behavior to a situation where you'll revert back to it because you know how to deal with it. And then you go, fuck, blokes treat me shit. I still remember this level, and you can, it's just this good. When you can say,
Rise beyond it. Yeah.
I there's people up here that will treat you beyond on this screen. Then you get to a level of life, go, you know what, I never knew that was out there. Let go of this person, because this person is person, environment, situation, etc., etc. If it costs you your mental health and it turns toxic and green, see you later. You're not swimming in my pool, or I'm not swimming in your pool ever again. Take care. Wish you all the best. And when I say that, I try and role model first. And if that person's still arrogant or ignorant to that situation, I'm trying to find a happy medium solution together. As I've seen Boom Bestie talk in effort, when someone who's going to turn me green and toxic inside by being in that environment, because I don't want to take on that vibe, that energy. Everything's about vibrancy and energy in life. Hence why I'm sitting here. We're definitely open and have a great conversation with.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that very much, man. It's
True
nice to
story.
hear, you know, that people do get that feel. So, Rusty, here we go.
I've got a second question for Jeffrey. I have an acquaintance of my father, and I'll say recently, he came out of jail for bank robbery 2 years ago. And it was, I don't know if you've heard of the Dirty Dozen over here. He was one of them. It's big, but if you had advice for anyone that's come out of jail for any sort of criminal activity, if you had any advice for them to change their life around for sentences, what would you say?
Thanks, Booms.
I'd say use the same skill set that you have and the same destructive skill set, because determination, resilience, perseverance, professionalism, whatever it is, take all those skills and put it into the real world, and you'll go to the highest level around your passion really quickly. True story. That's how quickly you can sum that up, because humans have qualities, and those qualities shine through in any level. Criminals have they grow 24/7. The Dirty Dozen operate at a particular level. I remember, I'm pretty sure I read the book, or watched the movie or something of that nature, or watch something, put it in a constructive way in a business around your passion, and you'll go to a high level. 2 years, realistically, with our business, when my brother committed suicide 2016, had a 2-year break from working. I had a lot of money saved. I lived off that. Then I started to sort of get into the mental health and well-being side, slowly but surely. The last 2 years hit, as you can imagine, and so realistically, my business has been going 2 years, and those same we've had contact with the Department of Defence, Corrective Services, Ministry of Health, New South Wales, like different states within Australia. All those helps to do programs, and if I can do that in 2 years, then blokes from the Dirty Dozen can do that in 2 years easy. And you might do it quicker. I can absolutely guarantee. It's on your passion, commit to it, persevere with it, and it will happen really quickly because you'll shine through.
Good advice there, man. Thank you. We've got one more message before we continue on with the podcast with a couple more questions. Here we go. Is the king.
Be proud of the dad. You know, at the end of your life, you started on the wrong path and you turned around and went the complete 180 and started doing everything right. And that's if you were killed by the police or died in a botched robbery or something like that, would have got to turn it around, and your kids would have looked at you probably in a different light than they will where they are now. It's kind of like a hero, as long as you remain a hero to your kids, man. You
huge story. On that story, the people that shot dead during that we knew, there's people alive during that period. And they were all within our circle. There was, the bank robbery in Melbourne. When we robbed the bank, prior to it, that we were under surveillance. Had the conversation. When we got caught, I said, "Mate, I told you, I knew we were under surveillance."
That's the story I kind of want to get into in a second, but yeah. I mean, I don't know if that connects with it right now, but let's go.
Long story short, mate, we came out of the bank and, mate, the police were there, and
so I don't mean to cut you off. I want to slow it down and go into this because this is kind of a highlight story here. This is the story that actually first it's one of the very few bits of information I knew about you. And this was the part that was on Spain. The bank and it went wrong for you. You're under surveillance. What was the planning and plotting before that? It sounds like from what the small bit that I heard, you had a feeling about this one. You weren't really ready to go in for it. So give me the breakdown.
We went down to Melbourne at the time. Was out about 6 months, just making huge money at that point in time. Went to Melbourne. Got down there, ended up getting a car out of a factory, M5 BMW. Always got something that was, high performance luxury car, good handling, good speed, weren't going to get caught. And during that time, we'd put the car away. Then we'd gone back to the car and back to the car. Just prior to that, I started to see this same car, and I kept saying, I've seen this same car in 3 different spots. And they're like, "Hey, you're tripping out. Worry about it. We're in Melbourne. No one knows this." It's like, you know what? I'm a bit suspicious. They had all together. I said, "There's that same fucking car." And we were suburbs away. We'd taken the car, moved the car closer to the bank. So that same fucking man, that is trippy. And then I said, and then it sort of followed us. I said, "Man, it's like, mate, you're tripping out." It disappeared. They go, don't stress. Bang, we see it again. I said, "Mate, we're under surveillance. I'm telling you, fucking, mate, you don't see this car that many times." Then we, long story short, put everything everywhere. We got everything ready. And we were lucky, by the police's words, not mine. We looked at another bank. They set up police helicopter, the dog squad, star unit, I think it's called.
They were
There.
ready for you in Victoria, even though you're from New South Wales. You planned to go
Correct.
rob, and this is for the US listeners. You know, we're talking two different states here. They do
Lines technically like in America, in general. And what had happened, the hotel said, they said to the hotel, is any blokes from Sydney that looks suspicious here? And because New South Wales police had part information, they, I don't know how it worked out. I think it was the rental car, but the car was there or something of that nature. Rang the hotel, any blokes from Sydney? And they said, no, there's one bloke that matches that description, but he's James Remuta. I said, yeah, he sent us the ID. They sent ID. They sent it to Sydney. That's not James. Surveillance started up at that point in time. They're bank robbers. They're we're trying to take them down. At that point in time, they were saying we're robbing banks across Australia. Their words, not mine. We got questioned about that once we did get arrested in Melbourne. And in general, from that point, we were under surveillance that whole time. We were lucky that they had set up at the other bank, because if we come out in the star unit, which is like the special operations unit or whatever you want to call it, in America, I'm not sure what they call it, but tactical sort of police.
TRG or something.
They don't muck around, you know. We're like literally coming out of a bank that's not going to go down well. And we're just very late at the other bank, and we're this bank, the surveillance crew, when we were coming out, the surveillance crew had worked out shit. They got a message. They were they dropped off and they said, we'll leave it with the heavies. They're going to take them down and move on. They were sort of in between both banks. And by the time the banks had sort of set off the alarm, or people ringing up saying, big robbery going on, they started to head across, had the jump on the other crew. And they got there when we were coming out. But the surveillance crew, which is weird, they get down on the ground. At this point, I would have been, it was in 2003. I think 2003 it was. So I would have been 30 at that point in time. I got out when I was 37. I'm 49 now. I've been out 12 years. So I was 30 at the time. We come out of the bank, and someone had tried to block. There's a video on YouTube about the actual story. If you type in Sledgehammer Gaming, it says something bank robberies. It's in yellow writing on YouTube, and you can actually see the story from that day. But we come out, and I always got depression order my name, so it was trying to know that I'd got arrested or anything of that nature. We come out, the car's on the front door of the bank, and he's driven up the gutter. He's tried to block the doors of the bank. We jump across the front of his bonnet, got gloves on, balaclavas on, all in black. We jump into the M5 beam takeoff. He tries to chase us, this motorbike, and I said, mate, they're a motocross rider or is some former highway patrol police motorbike rider. He says we jumped out, aimed something at him. He done a U-turn, took off and legged it, and we got away. Went back to the. As we went back to the hotel, I was saying, mate, I told you, it just didn't feel right. We were scrambling at that point, checked out of the hotel. And there was another hotel on the way, and we knew that hotel. I was like, let's go to that hotel. And they're like, no, don't worry, we'll just go back to the other one. I was like, hello. It wouldn't have mattered because they knew who we were. They knew that we'd robbed the bank. So even if we made it back to our state, they would have been rude, and I would have got arrested. In full bank, hotel reception or manager rings the police and said, hey, what happened? And they're back at the hotel. They're like, shit, fuck. Scramble, get the surveillance. That's them. Watch us get on a tram going to town. It's probably a 20, 30-minute trip. They're probably scrambling this whole time. We walk into Foot Locker, just shopping and doing boy things, I suppose, at that point in time, hanging out. And the rest was history. Next thing, they come running in, and the shop was with people, and get on the ground, get on the ground. Interesting story in that the copper grabs his pistol, looks at me, and just drops it right where I was down on the ground. My head was on the ground, drops it down, and the butt, I landed, boom, boom, and bounced in front of me. And yeah, I don't know what his intentions were to this day.
Did he want you to grab it to have your print?
Because he dropped it where the head fell and landed facing my head.
Right.
So that, yeah, maybe, oh shit, I dropped my gun and misfired. Too bad. And yeah, I said to him, mate, I know what you just did. I know what you just tried, buddy. And he's like, mate, you're under arrest for the bank robbery today. And I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And the rest was history. That's where the 7 years come from.
So you got pinched in Victoria and had to do a 7-year stint in Victoria.
Down there because I had a lot of the gangland killings were going on at the time down in Melbourne.
Is this the infamous underbelly killings that were going
yeah,
on?
so there was a whole series made on it, and that was going off at that time, which was had this law that were getting arrested. It wasn't fair to them. They could spend 5 years on remand, then guilty. And I think it led from other stuff in your past. And then they get found not guilty. What happens? They serve 5 years and they're a not guilty person. Should get some form of compensation or something. Just didn't. I don't. You got bail organically or straight away. And if you had a bit of show with it, and my cold cues went, I was like, yeah, you don't get bail on bank robberies. He ended up getting bail, and I was like, well, get me out of bail too. Like, so we ended up being down there for about, it was about 6 to 12 or something of that nature on bail. Might have even been longer, 18 months.
But you had to stay in Victoria?
I had to stay in Victoria because I had the parole in Sydney. So if I went back to get arrested, and that would have breached my bail in Melbourne. So they said, we'll give you bail, but you have to live in Victoria.
Right.
My co-accused got bail, went back to Sydney. One of my other accused had another offence that he'd been sentenced on. So he couldn't get, he'd pled early and he got stuck in that situation. So, and then he got it. Then he got it sorted, and they both got it in Melbourne as well. They lived in Melbourne. So 3 of us were in Melbourne. One went back to Sydney. And we all end up getting arrested as well for doing more crime. And making a bunch of
Broke
money.
parole then and then went inside.
Yeah, no, broke the bail conditions, went back in. I'd broken parole, broke the bail conditions, and I just was just destructive, mate. There's times where I had a Porsche at the time, Clara, glass roof, and driving, probably half an hour to the city. I just flew in at a pretty decent speed. I won't say what speed that was, but just let's say I was doing a nice speed all the way into the city and destructive, toxic life. I think it's great at the time, short-term gain for long-term pain. I should have been going the other way. And something I use now, if it's not going to serve you damage, just don't go into it. If it's if I'm going to dedicate my time, energy, and effort with it. Same thing. I'm using these little principles, and that's helped me step away from that destructive life that I've been through. I don't ever want to go back.
So can I ask you, like, you ended up serving your time then in Victoria, right? With that 7 years then. How was that with like visits from family or friends or anything? Because mostly they were in New South Wales. So did you not get that sort of contact much?
Even when we're in New South Wales, we didn't get that many visits in.
Right.
People don't see you in general because you're around people. There's not much and substance to the relationships. It's about survival, and you can make money together. We'll be there, but when you get locked up, you do me. And
What about family?
Mum very rarely visited me, to be honest, and straight out. I never asked, was it too much pain or what it was. So you think, oh, well, my mother doesn't care. Father was a prick. Fuck it, fuck cares, don't worry about it. I didn't have, growing up the way I did, I didn't have big relationships with uncles, aunties. I'd meet them, and that was it. Like, they'd spend a day and didn't have those role models. Whereas, and then being in Melbourne, it was just like, to me, it was nothing. It was like, whatever. It's all the same. I'll just deal with things the same way. And there was no expectancy of visits. I was at the time. I actually told my wife when I got locked up, same again, weird values, morals, and beliefs around more. Don't do you do your thing, you live your life, you be you. It's not worth it. She stayed for 5 years, and even then I wasn't comfortable with that. I said, mate, just go and live your life, enjoy it, still young, do everything for our kid. She had a heap of money. I said, just money, do what you got to do, enjoy life. And that was it, man. I didn't really have any expectations. That brings some down, and did that on the odd occasion. I was like, look, just live your life. Just tell son I'm in the army and I'll be back one day. I just didn't.
So this is your third kid then?
Nah, see, that was my son.
Oh, this is your son. Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, you do your thing, and I didn't want them to waste their life because of my decisions. And I think as much as I was destructive, I was still thinking about how much I was hurting these people that were in my life. They stepped away towards the end of the sentence. He came back and said, mate, I was doing the university, done a heap of courses. Always did courses when I was in always books. So anyone out
You seem highly intelligent, and I can imagine studying and occupying your time like that, Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's when I still listen to every day YouTube, something of that. I try and read at least one viewed study around something particular, but whether it's on a trainer level, well-being level, or nutritionist level, whether it's foods training or how you life. And I'm talking from each of those three, so 3 studies a day, and I'm listening to something. I'm constantly trying to level up on a regular basis, and I can't tell people how much me transition in life, but also in life, because it means you can get the language of many forms, whether I'm in the streets or whether I'm able to, but even change that language and really be able to adapt and connect with people. And I think that's a great skill to have. And as Basti asked before, to in a better way, a constructive way, and you flip your life like that.
So it's fair to say then this was the point. This was the sentence that you made to not continue out with that life, and you trying to better yourself. What was your mindset on the day of release? By that time, in that build up, releasing from prison, what did you plan to do from that point forth?
Yeah, I had no real plan. Funnily enough, I'd done a lot of courses in jail. We did a schools program, just started up just prior when I was there, where we'd talk to the school kids and talk to, about the pitfalls, about, things that happen. And I think I was releasing a lot of what I had built up. And I did a lot of courses in there around, which made me they had what was called the violence prevention. I think it was violence. There was consequential thinking, those sorts of things, and that really into deep sort of conversations that I'd never had, and most people in society don't have with themselves, because we're constantly on the go. You think about tomorrow. What you got to do tomorrow? If you're working, you've got kids, you got this, that, and the other. You have to think about a component of your life that's destructive, and sitting down with myself in the 11 years, I had a huge amount of time to really reflect about what would all the lessons that I got out of this and that situation, the next one. And by the time I came home, I just knew one thing: I was never coming back to again. I think that for me was huge, and by the time I walked out, I'd written to parole, which in the past I would have said parole, and I'm not telling them I'm locked up. They can come and get me. That sort of toxic attitude. And I knew by doing that, not only was I taking accountability, but more than likely the minimum parole period was 3 months. And sure enough, because I handed myself in, I had a different attitude. I lined up work in the 2 weeks that I was there. And that meant when I spoke to parole, when I handed my Parramatta police station, it was by chance I had the 2 weeks spare too, because I rang Parramatta, which was the closest to where I was. We'd had a property. I said, mate, I've got to hand myself. Here's the situation. He goes, mate, I'm on hold, but you obviously got great intentions. You just done 7 years. Go and spend 2 weeks with your family. You stay. I said, what happens in between if I get pulled over? He goes, no, I'll put a note on the system that you're going to hand yourself in on this day. I said, yeah, sweet. Bang, hand it. I don't know, it would have worked if I got pulled over. I didn't do too much other than spend time with my family anyway. So 2 weeks rolled around, handed myself in, and I had a job lined up. I had cancer. I'd been seeing a psych within that just for myself. Like, you invest in that would be I always.
Mate, 2010 is when you got out, is right? I think you mentioned that before. So the last years you've been on a positive climb. What have you achieved in this time, and where are you planning to take things now?
Yeah, so ideally, I'd love our community, the Aboriginal community here, to improve their quality of life. And to do that, we have so many different language groups. And out of those language groups, and which means, like, if you look at the map of Australia, it's broken into for us as Aboriginal people, it's broken into tribes. Those tribes basically want to create health professionals, whether dietitians, nutritionists, trainers, mental health and wellbeing first aiders, to be through the 67 modules from the lifestyle program to really self-empower ourselves. That's like an ultimate goal. For whatever reason, it's become very diverse, and we've had the opportunity to sit in front of 500,000 people and impact those people, and that's just human beings. And I think if you continue to do that, grow the business where there's more opportunity, give other people in a destructive pathway the opportunity to share their experience and what are the lessons they learned using the 67 modules. I think that will be a powerful journey to be able to re-employ a lot of these younger kids. Or men that have been, or we should say, anyone that's been through a journey of destruction. You've got great skills. Going back to what Mr. Bombastic said, every PhD unit PhD has been written up by somebody in general from the experiences of people within life, some data collection, whatever it is. I've collected so much data up here through the years of experience that I can turn into my own program. If it's not, and we are in the process of trying to get this recognized, but in general, even if it's not, those lessons change or save somebody's life. We've had messages of people who have stopped us from leaving this planet that deep to keep people that have been addicted to many years, including ice, those drugs, and now start to go to work and be there for their kids. If we can turn 500,000 in 3 years to 500,000 in 3 months, every 3 months, then that'll be an amazing journey because we'll have a huge impact. Wow. I know that we have a huge buy-in. We've got 93% success rate from that program. Imagine having 500,000 people every 3 months come through the program and be able to actually impact those people through an amazing journey.
That's fantastic, mate. It's really wish you the best on that journey, man. We've got sitting here from Mr. Bombastic. I'm just going to play that for you. Here we go.
One more quick question. On the Rocstedi podcast before, but attached to your name, where you live, everything. I mean, I just went on Google and I saw your name associated with bank robberies. So, how do you deal with that stigma, even if it still happens to this day, which I'm sure it does? Yeah, oh, this guy. That's that guy that used to rob bank, rolled around on his sledgehammers or whatever it is. How do you deal with that? Because that must be tough, You wake up in the morning, you do whatever, and someone might hit you on the street. How do you deal with that?
I think the biggest thing for me is that I've said during this, and that's the awareness of what people say about me isn't my business. And to be straight out, Mr. Bombastic, this is for everybody, and this is for yourselves. I just don't. If we get caught up trying to control an external, we'll live a very unpleasant society, my workplace. If I just be myself and true, authentic self and be vulnerable, example and say, I learned some fucking lessons as a bank robber, as a person who grew up on the streets. That I'm not putting, here's the lessons that I've learned. I'm going to turn them into a program that can impact and affect others in a positive way, whether it's a school kid through to, as I said, a soldier and everyone in between. Then I've done something good. And if someone wants to judge me on it, I don't. And we do a conference. I've got a Unstoppable Leadership Conference. In our nation's capital this year, as an example, funnily enough, interviewing a bloke who was an ex-police officer he's one of the participants within it. He has a podcast called I Catch Killers, unbelievable podcast as well. But in general, I just don't take on board anything. And I think even to this point, where they say it's a huge where people, and we started today's podcast and someone jumped on and was trying to troll us. I just don't give any recognition to it. Mate, people would say I was, I don't really, but someone that's done something to kids. And an example down in the comments, and I just wouldn't answer it who I am. And I know, and that's how trolls will be trolls, or people that want to be toxic will be, and I'm not going to buy into that situation. That's when you get to that level of control. I think I learned that in jail. I was able to step away from really toxic situations and find a better solution. If it's costing you mental health, it's costing too much. If I to that troll in here and say it's stuff, but what are you talking about? I'm a banker. I went, just take of it. They will. Those that want to judge on them. I think in society it's a huge lesson. If we could, I say this many times, if you have some judging, means that you make the role model that I need to see. And I want to ask yourself this question: if you're that model and you're judging me, how much better are you if you have the solution and you're be in a position where we what I'm going to do is actually sit down with Jeff and show him a better way to do things within life. Because as I said, you must have the solution to that problem. Sit down with me or whoever it is and have the actual conversation. Help create positive change in the community. If you don't, the person on a destructive level could get to a point where they become more and more violent. And maybe it's a family member that gets hit on the other side by that action from someone who's just become more and more violent. And funnily enough, technically, you might have the solution to that problem for the person that they can't see because they were never role modeled in. It's a sad story, no doubt it's happened many a times. Please do yourselves, if you do listen to this and you have that solution, be willing to sit with the person, and you don't have to say, hey, it's like me as a trainer, hey, you need to lose weight. The person that it's not going to change anything. What can you do to that person to help them say, "Oh, I want to, where, what would you like to achieve for yourself? What would you like to feel? What emotions would you like to tap into? What would that look like for yourself?" And then I'm helping that person see something that they've never seen. They go, I can't run around. I can't run 2Ks a day or treadmill for 10 minutes. I said, who do you need to? Walk around the block for me. Walk around the block, just one block. And they're like, that's easy. I said, well, one week, that's all I want you to do. Do that. Basically, what I want you to do is slowly but surely increase it at a time and speed that you feel comfortable in doing so. But I want you to tomorrow try and get it in 4 minutes 50. Don't keep working towards it every single day until you get it, and then aim for 4:50, 4:58, and so forth. And that way I've sat down with the person, created a sound solution to get for them, not just saying, hey mate, you should stop robbing banks because it's not good, and you up and throw away the key. It's not a solution. It's
No. There's a process to it, right? It's not just a flick. It's the path that you take, is what you're trying to say, right?
Criminals to change like that. It's mate, I was so from 12 years old by the time I was 16, and in heavy crime at 16-year-old kid blows me that were even. I was heavily involved by 14, to be straight out and honest. To have a look at a 14-year-old kid, the kid's playing soccer and netball, something of that, doing something as a kid would be doing. I'm out doing this crazy stuff. It's just insane. Sit down and show them a better way, and we'll get outcome for the whole world. It will start to shift and change. But until we don't sit down and do that, until we listen and learn, seek to understand, we can't solution because we think we're better than somebody and we sling judgment on somebody. It's crazy. I could sit there and go, why are all these, and the nicest way to those that are going, why are all these people, mate, what are you, only you're going to get fit, you're going to lose weight, and then he's all fall over, he's all, you're all shit, and I could go back to my old, not that I really, anyway, but in general, it wouldn't create, you got to lose, get up and have a go, mate. That's not going to help somebody. It's really not. Sitting down with that person, working out a plan you feel comfortable in, and they feel a part of, and a part of that conversation will actually create positive change within your life. Sorry, I thought my dog was choking.
I've been keeping an eye during the show, just in the mirror behind you.
Yeah. I can see it. I can see it. Yeah, she's there. Just this little.
Yeah.
Spec.
So we have a couple messages from Punky that drew just recently, a couple of minutes ago. Here we go.
If that really even made sense. My point got across properly. But I would like to say that I think from the time I've seen you, Jeffrey, are a very wise person and someone that I could learn from, and I have already, learned from you. You're very smart, and the way you speak, it's just so I can agree with almost everything you say. And I'm not the type of person to agree with everything that someone says. I like to debateful person and not always agree. I'm not that type of person to always agree with someone, but with you, I cannot any because I don't know. I feel like you talk a lot of common sense. Yeah, you're very wise. That's all I've got to say. And thank you.
She has a follow up here.
Sucking up there. Okay, just so you know, no sucking up. I'm just saying how I see it and how I feel. I think you are going to do a lot for people and just being wise like you are. It's good, and thank you. And why don't you get those young kids you were talking about earlier? And, like I heard of a camp out in the bush for kids before they go to juvie. I think it's like in Western Australia. I think that's fantastic. I think idea because why should these kids be just sent straight to jail like they're wrong? I think good encouragement and someone to help them and care about them on a good path rather than being chucked in the no good jar or no good pot, but in people to believe that they are good is going to be good.
Thank you, Buggy. No, mate, that made sense to me.
Plenty, and it's funny because that camp out in the bush where they once they get in trouble in WA, I know someone who's heavily involved in that, and it's just about to start up. Technically, I might be a part of the. Stay tuned, which is
I'm from WA. Mate, if you head this way, let me know. Yeah, I'd love to be around.
I think it's more in the middle of Wook,
yeah,
definitely.
Up
A shout out to you, brother. I kids. Same thing. I think he actually made a comment here. Even as a criminal, you're a good person. You just made bad choices. Mate, Humdinger's on here. For those that know TikTok, he was correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure he was.
That's huge, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
number one on TikTok, and he was from the area. So, done amazing skills as a storyteller, as a entertainer, and he's gone out and killed it this week and become number one. And mate, on skills, saying he was getting into to try and be able to turn around just by seeing and believing. He got on TikTok. TikTok giving him an opportunity where he put a video out, got this feedback, made some money, went shit. He said dropped a gift on him. It was like $800. And basically at that point in time, he just what I can actually do something. My life at this point in time forms an opportunity, and this week he's become number one on TikTok over the whole week. Big shout out to you, Dings. Love you, bro.
Shout out to you, and you have to give some pointers or because they're going to be competition, I guess. Yeah, however you do it, right?
I never see any competition. The only thing I'm doing
number one on TikTok. How you get that? I mean, yeah.
I think I'd use this platform more just the same thing. Share the journey and share the lesson.
Like it for this, correct? Yeah, like what we're doing now, man.
Yeah, 100%. And if you end up being up in the rankings because of that, awesome.
Exactly.
Dunks or things. He's got his way of doing things, and mate, love how he does it. You always have a good laugh. If you don't know what he's like, head across to his.
I'm gonna hit that one. Here we go.
Just thought I'd add, like I've already added like 100 things. I heard my dog in the back.